Again, a lot to this here, so I do want to bring in a friend of the show here, Michael Szanto, foreign policy expert, to help discuss all of it. Michael, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
You're very welcome.
All right, so first off, the big question that I do want to ask you here is, overall, what stood out to you about what you heard from President Trump as well as other members of his administration there?
Well, General Kane basically did a good job of really illustrating what an incredibly excellent job the whole U.S. military did in carrying out this operation. And this operation was a major blow against dictatorship, for freedom of democracy. I think that Secretary Marco Rubio also explained things very well. I think this is a big victory for the Trump administration by having the guts, frankly, to carry it out for sure. It's a victory for the United States of America. Unfortunately, I think that President Trump's message could have been much better. His focus on oil is excessive. And keep in mind that America's enemies always falsely claim that we're in it for the oil. And sometimes President Trump kind of says that. Now, oil is important. We can't ignore it. But I do think that the president's message could have been more refined. And really, the overall storyline for decades is democracy versus dictatorship. And Maduro, of course, was aligned, unfortunately, with our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. So this was very important for national security as well.
One thing that stood out to me that we heard from President Trump was, because we've heard from folks on the left, they have said essentially that they were not notified of this ahead of time. They wanted to be notified of it. President Trump did address that in a question and said Congress leaks. And of course, they wanted to prevent any sort of leaks. That was his explanation for that. What do you make of that? Because obviously a leak itself could have caused some big issues. There wouldn't have necessarily been the surprise if there had been any kind of leak.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There are mechanisms to prevent that. You know, there are highly secure sites that senators and some key representatives have. We could look at, the Democrats and Republicans involved. It's been done before with Operation to Kill bin Laden, for example. The Congress was very much involved. I think it was months before, with the actual training where they created a replica of the bin Laden home. Once the CIA kind of narrowed on that house and began to suspect that it was probably bin Laden living there. There are ways. And it is unfortunate and disconcerting that the Trump administration earlier in this term has sometimes not been so concerned with legality, checks and balances, and normal restraints of military power, kind of making moves of using the military in American cities in a way we've never seen before, which is disconcerting when there really wasn't any major thankful riots or something that might actually justify or require it. So there are legitimate concerns about the way the Trump administration uses the military. But perhaps they couldn't have consulted Congress. I think that's reasonable to consider that possibility.
What do we need to be watching for, based in your expertise and opinion here? What should we be watching for in the coming hours, days, and maybe even months here?
I think that the Trump administration ideally needs to prioritize a little bit the restoration of democracy. This was one of the high notes of our invasion of Panama to get the fugitive Noriega that sets kind of a precedent. If we try to make a deal with another dictator, which perhaps the current vice president appointed by Maduro sort of is, we could be moving in a negative direction. Still, by exerting control, we could revive the oil industry, which weakens our adversaries, Russia and Iran, and helps the American public as well, cheaper gas prices. But it undermines our legitimacy. And it has been strongly the U.S. position since the end of World War II, and has served us incredibly well that we support democracy and freedom. And when we support democracy and freedom historically, we're at our best and we tend to be our strongest. Today, our military showed how we still have by far the best military in the world, but I think we'll do well in the long run by doing good, which is doing our best to restore democracy and freedom to Venezuela, rather than trying to cut a deal with a dictator for short-term reasons.
Taking a look at this photo here before I let you go, did want to ask what stands out to you about this photo of Maduro that was released by President Trump there on Truth Social?
Well, I think I see handcuffs, if I'm correct, because I'm looking at
Yeah,
it from my laptop right now.
it looks like it, yeah.
I think that generally what we're seeing with this operation, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized it, and so the general is that this is a Justice Department led operation. They had an indictment from a U.S. court. He's going to be tried in a U.S. court, Southern District of New York, as they pointed out. So that there is a legal basis. He's a criminal. He was a fugitive. Thug is a good word, even though not a technical word. Very, very good word. So it shows the power of American justice. In fact, it was a Secretary of State from a different party, Madeleine Albright, that decades ago, after the terrorist attack against our naval ship USS Cole before 9/11, said that something to the fact that the arms of American justice is very long, and this is about justice. And when we can, and we, do a trial and allow the person their defense and bring them before a court, American court, or another court that has jurisdiction, that is the greatest thing we can do to serve justice throughout the world.
All right. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and discuss all of this, to break it down. Anything that we missed, anything you want to make sure to mention here before I let you go?
I will highlight what Marco Rubio also highlighted. This is a blow against the Cuban government. So, and as others today have pointed out, as well as myself, this is a blow against Russia, China, and Iran. And let us hope, I personally hope the Trump administration uses a similar approach as President Trump has suggested he would, and put us on the side of the Iranian people against the murderous, brutal dictators in Tehran. We could see freedom in Venezuela. We could see freedom in Iran. And we could even see freedom finally in Cuba. This could be a major blow against dictatorship. I just think we need to remember the overall plot of decades. It's about democracy against dictatorship. And we cannot forget who we are as Americans. As Americans in the United States, we are about freedom and democracy. And if we ever forget that, we lose track of who we are, and we're far weaker as a result.
All right. Michael Szanto, foreign policy expert, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
You too.